everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I work with a lot of individuals with attachment wounds. I work with a lot of avoidance. A lot of my patients are men. However, today I wanted to specifically talk about my female patients. And even more specifically, my fearful avoidant female patients. Now, this is a pattern that I notice. It's not always the case, but I do notice this, and I want to preface, I am not diagnosing anybody in this video. I can diagnose people, but not in a video, okay? I definitely have worked with my fair share of patients with personality disorders, even as such as narcissism, okay? I want to be honest that even though I share a lot of attachment videos on here, I specialize in attachment, of course, but I also specialize in personality disorders. If you guys are curious more about personality disorders, I have worked with every single personality disorder. I've worked with mixed personality. I've worked with every type of personality disorders, even histrionic. Like, I have worked with so many different varieties of personality disorders that I have a lot of knowledge of that as well. And so I think that's really important to highlight as I'm talking about this. What I've noticed is many of my fearful avoidant patients who are women also have mothers who fit the criteria of narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. And I cannot specifically diagnose somebody's parent unless the parent is my patient, but I at least want the patients to have some awareness that this is what's going on, so we can at least bring up some of the criteria in session and let them kind of speculate. However, if you are a fearful avoidant woman, you might want to know some of this stuff because it is why your attachment, part of the reason why your attachment style was developed. And so I think it's important that you know, for your own sake and for your relationship's sake, and just in general, kind of what happened, so that you know what to research and evaluate. And with your therapist, you can kind of talk about these things because these wounds are very deep. I'm going to go through signs that kind of show maybe this is you and that this happened because your mother might have a personality disorder, specifically NPD. Not always the case, but specifically. And the last one is probably the most important. So I hope that you stick around so you can figure that out with me. Let's go ahead and jump in. The first one is your mother. And this is when you were growing up. She compared you to everybody, to which made you feel less than. So let's break that up and we'll talk about an example. She never compared you as if you're better than somebody or what you're doing that's good. She compared you for what you were doing that's not enough. So let's go with an example. And it's usually people that's close to home. It might even be your siblings, honestly. She may have said something like, you were so skinny when you were younger. She might even compare you to yourself. What happened to you now? Right? She may say, oh, look at your cousin. She got into an Ivy League school. What school are you going to apply to? I don't see that you're applying to an Ivy League school, or you're not going to an Ivy League school. Or she may say, oh, look, your cousin's a doctor and you're just a med tech. She'll look down on what you do, even though what you do is important, right? She compares you. And this is growing up, but it can also be in adulthood, because some of these examples I just mentioned are more of adulthood. But growing up, she might say, oh, look at your sister's hair. It's so curly. And then obviously yours is straight. So she might indirectly do it. She may say, oh, look at you, how your cousin, I don't know, how beautiful your cousin is. I wish you were that beautiful. Or, oh, look how your cousin dresses, or look at all the plays that your cousin's in and you're not. She can be indirect or direct, but she's always comparing and making you feel like you're less than. And that can be very hurtful. And that's why fearful avoidance, they always struggle with perfectionism. They feel like they're not enough. And that's the second one. You, as an adult, not really when you were a teenager, because a lot of fearful avoidance struggled with depression and anxiety and might be even more, but I'm not going to get into that in this particular video. But you struggle as an adult with overachieving and you struggle with perfectionism. Nothing is ever enough. Nothing's ever enough. You have to get the best job. And you guys tend to be workaholics. A lot of you guys are working and just building and building and building. You're the highest level of whatever. You're the owner of a company, but it's never enough. And you know what? Your mom still to this day, she doesn't think it's enough either. And you live with that. You live with that. And it's very, very painful. The next one is you struggle with high functioning mental diagnostic impressions. It can be anxiety. It can be depression. I've seen OCD. I've seen mood disorders. But because you're so afraid to be vulnerable, you found maladaptive ways to live with these things where it doesn't affect your career, but it's high functioning, so it does affect something. And you know where it typically affects? It affects your relationships. And that shows up a lot. It affects your daily functioning that is behind closed doors. After that long day of work, you can't even do the dishes because you just had such a long day. You need to lie down. You need to just sit in front of the sofa and just watch TV. You don't even know what you're watching. Sometimes you're so detached because you're always trying to cope with everything that's going on. You never ask for help. Now, the next one is you consciously or even subconsciously believe that love is conditional because your mom acted like love was conditional. Maybe once you got into that Ivy League school, now she loves you and she's love bombing you and she's praising you and telling you you're the best. But as soon as you don't do well, she pulls away again, right? Love is conditional. That's what you believe. So with your partners, you never open up and show your flaws. And this is in general fearful avoidance, not just fearful avoidant woman, fearful avoidance in general. You never want to show your flaws. You don't want to show that maybe you make less money than your partner. You're hiding your tax return or whatever it is. You don't want to show what's really struggling with. Maybe you got fired and you will not tell anybody your mountains and mountains of credit card debt because you will not admit you need help. Love is conditional. If I ask for help, I'm going to be abandoned. I'm never enough. That's what you guys believe in, and it's not true, but you believe that. The next one is you think your values are based on your accomplishments, your looks, or some form of external perception. Who you are inside, if you're a good person, if you're genuine, if you're honest, that doesn't matter. It matters if you make a 6-figure salary. It matters if you look like a model. It matters if you have all the friends in the world. It matters if you have a big house. It matters if you drive a Lexus. That's what matters. That's what you think. And so you work hard, you cover your emotions up, and you never open up because you don't think who you are inside is enough. It's not valuable. The next one is you blame yourself regularly. Like so much, almost everything is your fault. Everything's your fault. And that's because when you were younger, your mom literally blamed you. I had one patient that told me that her mom blamed her for a natural disaster that was happening in a different country. Like it wasn't even happening in the United States. I'm not even making that up. That is so strange. And she was like, you know what? I think it makes sense that it was my fault. And she gave me an explanation. Like she did not even realize how absurd this really is. And it was very sad. She blames herself so comfortably that, fearful avoidant women, they'll blame themselves for their boss being in a bad mood. Is my boss mad at me? They'll blame themselves if their partner's pulling away. They'll blame themselves for their mom's mood, of course. They may even put it on their dad, depending on what the relationship is with their dad. So that's another one. And the last one, and this one I think is the most important, is you as an adult, you've been in relationships with narcissists, avoidance, or both. You tend to be with people who are pretty unavailable, but not necessarily unavailable where you are feeling entirely anxious. It might be, but it's usually people who tend to have an inflated sense of self and may even be abusive. And that can be scary. And I'm being honest with you, but you're with people who don't seem to value who you really are, or you don't know how they value you. And so that's kind of what I wanted to share. I just think it's important and I hope it helps somebody. Go ahead and subscribe, like, and I will see you in the next one.